I gave him everything, my time, my love, my youth, for 14 years. I was the one who stayed up with him when he was sick, who helped with homework, who showed up to every game and school play. But on his 18th birthday, he thanked his real mum in heaven like I never existed. I did not argue. I did not cry. I just handed him the envelope that changed everything. The one that proved I was never his legal mother, and I was never required to pay a single cent for his college. The look on his face, he finally understood who truly raised him. My name is Claire Bennett. I am 38 years old, and for the past 14 years, I have poured every ounce of love, time, and energy I had into raising a boy who was never biologically mine. His name is Ryan. When I first met him, he was just a confused, quiet 4-year-old with big blue eyes and a sad little heart. His mother had passed away from cancer 6 months before I met his father, Mark. Mark and I met at a charity event hosted by a mutual friend. He was a widower, reserved and polite, and there was something about the way he spoke about his late wife that tugged at my heart. I had just turned 24, and though I had no experience raising children, I was deeply drawn to the idea of helping someone heal. Within a year, we were married. Everyone said I was too young to step into the role of a wife and mother at the same time, but I ignored them. I believed love could conquer anything. Ryan was difficult at first. He used to wake up crying for his real mom, and he would not let me braid his hair or help him with homework. He called me Claire for the first 2 years, never Mom. I did not push. I cooked his favorite meals, helped him tie his shoes, attended every single parent-teacher meeting, and sat beside him through every flu, stomach bug, or scraped knee. Slowly, he warmed up to me. When he was 8, he called me Mom for the first time. I cried in the laundry room for 10 minutes. That one word felt like the culmination of everything I had been trying to be for him. Mark traveled a lot for work. He was a software consultant and spent most of his weeks in different states. So the real parenting? It fell on me. I was the one who taught Ryan how to ride a bike, who stayed up with him when he had nightmares, and who taught him to be respectful, kind, and disciplined. I did not complain. I loved being a mother, even if I had never given birth myself. For years, everything seemed stable. Ryan was doing well in school. I was managing a small online boutique from home, and Mark was earning enough to keep us comfortable. I never once made Ryan feel like he owed me anything for the sacrifices I made. I chose this. I chose him, and I did it out of love. But as Ryan grew older, subtle things began to shift. He started pulling away. At first, I thought it was just teenage mood swings. Then came the silence at dinner, the sarcastic replies, the way he would refer to his late mother as my real mum, in front of me as if to remind me that no matter what I did, I could never replace her. I let it go. Grief is strange, I told myself. Maybe this is just a part of his emotional journey. When Ryan was 16, he got into an argument with me over curfew. He shouted, "You are not even my real mum," and slammed the door. That night, I cried harder than I ever had. Mark comforted me, but he never truly confronted Ryan about it. It was always me who had to keep the peace. Always me who had to forgive and pretend I was not hurt. Then came senior year. Ryan had big dreams. He wanted to attend NYU, and I supported him. I even started setting aside money from my boutique, cutting back on expenses, skipping vacations, and working late nights to build a college fund just for him. Mark said he would match what I saved, but I knew better than to rely on him fully. Mark was good at promising things and terrible at following through, so I made it my mission to make sure Ryan's future was secure. What hurt the most was not that Ryan began to pull away from me emotionally. It was how he began to rewrite history. He started talking to people about how his father raised him alone, as if I had never existed in those 14 years. He posted on social media about how strong his real mom must have been, and how he felt her presence every day. Not once did he mention the woman who had been physically present every single day of his life since he was 4 years old. Then came his 18th birthday. Mark and I had planned a small surprise dinner at his favorite restaurant. We invited a few of his friends, and I spent the whole day decorating the house with baby pictures, banners, and cupcakes with little graduation caps on them. I even made a photo collage that showed every stage of his life: first steps, baseball trophies, school plays, everything. He arrived, smiled politely, and said thanks. Not warm, not cold, just hollow. I told myself maybe he was overwhelmed, but then I checked my phone. Ryan had just posted a picture on Instagram. It was a baby photo of him in his late mother's arms. The caption read, "Happy 18th to me. Thank you to my real mom in heaven for watching over me all these years. Everything I am is because of you." There was no mention of me, not even a whisper of acknowledgement. My chest tightened. I stared at the screen for a long time while people around me laughed and ate cake. I did not cry. Not then. Not there. Instead, I quietly walked to the coat closet, opened the top shelf, and pulled out a white envelope. I had been keeping it for over a year. Mark did not even know I had it. I returned to the table, handed it to Ryan, and said, "This is for you." He looked at me confused, but took it. I walked away and sat down at the other end of the table. A minute later, his face turned pale. Because inside that envelope was a document I had obtained after speaking with my attorney. It stated clearly that I had never adopted Ryan, that he was never my legal child, and that the money I had saved for his college, it was in my name. I was never legally required to provide it, and I no longer intended to. Ryan did not say a word. He just stared at me across the table, stunned. And that was only the beginning. The silence around the dinner table was heavier than any argument we had ever had. Ryan's friends kept talking, unaware of the emotional bomb that had just exploded. But his eyes were locked on mine, wide, almost pleading, as if he was realizing something for the very first time. He did not open his mouth for the rest of the night. When it was time to leave, he just nodded quietly at Mark, avoided my gaze completely, and walked out. The photo collage I made for him was still sitting untouched on the corner table. I left it there. That night, Mark asked me what I had given Ryan. I told him the truth. I said I had handed over the document, proving that Ryan was never legally mine. Mark looked stunned. "But you raised him like your own," he said. "You are his mom, Claire." I smiled, not out of joy, out of disbelief. "You and I both let him forget that," I replied. For days, Ryan did not speak to me, but that did not surprise me. What surprised me was that Mark also began to act distant. He stopped coming to bed early. He stayed on his phone longer. I started to wonder if I had disrupted something deeper than just a birthday, and I was right. 1 week later, I walked into Mark's home office to drop off some coffee, and his computer screen was still glowing. I saw an open chat. I was not the type to snoop, but this time, I looked. The message was from a woman named Diana. The thread went back months. There were pictures, messages, private jokes, even late-night confessions. And then I saw it. "Ryan would have been proud of us," she had written just a few days earlier. "He knows who his real mum was, and he knows who was never meant to replace her." I stood there, frozen. Diana was Mark's late wife's best friend. I had only met her twice over the years, once at a funeral, once at a school function. I never thought twice about her. But now I understood. She had been speaking to Ryan behind my back, feeding him emotional poison, making him believe that honoring his dead mother meant erasing me completely. Mark had allowed it. Worse, he had encouraged it. When he entered the room and saw me at his desk, he turned white. "Claire, I can explain." I raised my hand to stop him. I was done listening. "I sacrificed my youth, my energy, and my dreams to raise your son," I said, my voice firm. "And while I was doing that, you were letting another woman rewrite the story." Mark tried to say that it was harmless, that he only reached out to Diana for comfort, but I was no longer interested in comforting anyone but myself. The next morning, I called the financial aid office at NYU. I had access to Ryan's college applications because I had been listed as a financial contributor. I withdrew my commitment. I transferred the money I had saved for his tuition into a personal investment account, money I would now use to rebuild my life. A few hours later, Ryan came home. His expression was not angry. It was scared. Maybe Diana had told him what I saw. Maybe Mark had. He stood awkwardly at the edge of the kitchen and finally said, "Why are you doing this?" I looked at him. My heart ached to see the same boy I had once rocked to sleep now looking at me like I was the villain, but I stayed firm. I did everything out of love, I said, but love does not mean allowing yourself to be erased. He looked away. You are punishing me. No, I said. I am freeing myself. Then I handed him another envelope. This time it was smaller. Inside was a handwritten note. It said, "You will always have the memories. You will always have the years, but you do not have the right to ignore the woman who gave them to you." Ryan read it in silence. He did not tear up. He did not say anything profound. He just left. Later that evening, I found one of his old notebooks tucked under my bed. I opened it. It was from when he was 10. Inside were messy drawings of a house with 3 stick figures. 1 man, 1 boy, 1 woman, labeled Mom. That label was written in Ryan's small, childish handwriting. He had known. He had once believed I was enough. And then he chose to forget. But that was not even the biggest twist. 1 month later, I received a letter in the mail. It was from Diana. The envelope was pale pink, soft and almost delicate, like the kind you would send for birthdays or baby showers. There was no return address, just my name written in cursive, almost childlike. I stared at it for a while, debating whether I should even bother. But curiosity won. Inside was a single folded letter. "Claire, I know you must hate me, and maybe you should. But before you throw this away, I need you to know the truth. Not what Mark told you, not what Ryan believes, the actual truth. I was not just Mark's late wife's best friend. I was more than that. I was in love with him before she ever married him. We had an affair for nearly a year before she died, and after she passed, he promised we would be together. But then he met you. He used you, Claire. He needed someone to raise Ryan so he could keep working, keep traveling, and keep his hands clean. He chose you because you were young, soft-hearted, and desperate for love. I begged him to tell you the truth. He said you would never find out, but I watched from a distance. I watched you mother a child that was never yours, while he slowly forgot every promise he made. I only started reaching out to Ryan when I realized Mark was never going to tell the truth. I wanted Ryan to know who his mother really was, not because I hated you, but because I could not stand to see him erase her memory. But maybe I went too far. I do not want forgiveness. I just wanted you to know that none of this was your fault. Diana, my fingers trembled as I held the letter. The weight of those words pressed down like an avalanche. I had sacrificed everything for a man who had lied to me from the very beginning, and I had raised a boy under the illusion of a family built on loyalty, while behind the scenes, the people closest to me had treated me like a placeholder. But even that was not the end. That evening, Mark returned home early. He looked tired. There were bags under his eyes, and he smelled like coffee and stress. I held up the letter without a word. He read it. His face turned to stone. "I should have told you," he muttered. I stared at him. "You should have told me before I gave up my 20s, before I emptied my savings for your son's future, before I let him call me Mom." Mark tried to reach for me, but I stepped back. "Do not touch me," I said quietly. He dropped his hand. "Claire, Diana was not supposed to reach out to him. That was not part of the plan." That word made my stomach twist. The plan? What plan, Mark? He opened his mouth, hesitated, then said something I will never forget. "I was never going to marry you. I was going to ask Diana to move in, but then Ryan grew attached. You were easier. Easier. 14 years of mothering, of cooking, cleaning, tucking in, consoling and sacrificing, reduced to a single word. I walked upstairs, packed 2 suitcases, and left that night. No dramatic goodbye. No tears. Just silence. I moved into a small apartment across town. I reopened my boutique full-time. Within weeks, I was busier than ever. Orders were coming in faster than I could handle. People were asking for interviews, partnerships, even retail space. For the first time in years, I was building something for myself. Not for a child. Not for a husband. For me. But Ryan was not finished. 2 months after I left, he showed up at my store. He looked different. Thinner, older. Like the truth had aged him fast. He held out a small box. "I found this in the attic," he said. Inside was a handmade card he had drawn for me when he was 9. It said, "Happy Mother's Day to the best mom ever." "I do not know what to believe anymore," he whispered. "I just know I was wrong." I took a deep breath. "You were a child. They fed you lies." "I do not want the money," he said. I just want to fix this." I looked him in the eyes. "Some things you cannot fix, but you can learn. And that starts by knowing who really stood by you." Ryan nodded. He did not ask for forgiveness. He did not beg. He just left the box and walked out. I did not cry. But the next day, I opened a new bank account. In it, I deposited a small amount, enough to get by, but not a full ride. Enough to show him that while love can be betrayed, it is not always erased. And yet, just when I thought the dust had settled, something else arrived in the mail. It was not addressed to me. It was addressed to Ryan. But it was my address, and the name on the return label. A woman I had never heard of before. The envelope was thicker than usual. The handwriting was bold, almost aggressive, and the sender's name read, Melissa Grant. I had never heard of her. No mention of a Melissa had ever come up in all those years with Mark, with Ryan, or even in Diana's letter. But something about it felt heavy, like it carried a piece of a puzzle I did not know was missing. I sat there, just staring at it for a while, debating whether I should open it. It was addressed to Ryan, but he no longer lived with me. And after everything that had happened, a strange instinct pushed me to tear it open. Inside was a stack of photos and a typed letter. The first photo was of a teenage boy, maybe around 16, standing beside a woman who looked eerily familiar. I flipped to the next. Another boy, same face, different hair. Then another photo, this time of a hospital bracelet. The name on it read, Melissa Grant. The date was the same year Ryan was born. I finally looked at the letter. "Dear Ryan, you do not know me, but I know you. I have watched you grow from a distance, and I promised myself I would stay away until you were old enough to make your own decisions. But when I saw your birthday post, thanking your real mom in heaven, I knew I had to tell you the truth. Because that woman was not your real mom, and neither is the one who raised you. Your real mother is alive. She is me. My name is Melissa. I gave birth to you when I was just 19. I was young, scared, and had no family support. I made a decision I thought was best. I let a couple adopt you, a couple I trusted. But something went wrong. They never filed the paperwork. They separated. And eventually the man, Mark Bennett, ended up with you. He moved states, changed your school, and never told you the truth. I tried to find you for years. When I finally tracked you down, you were living with a woman named Claire, who seemed to love you like her own. I decided not to interfere. But now that you are 18, I think you have the right to know who you really are. I am enclosing photos, hospital records, and my DNA test results. If you want to meet me, I will be here. Love, Melissa. I read the letter twice, then a third time. My hands were cold. My chest tightened. The foundation of everything I thought I knew had just been shattered all over again. But this time, it was not just my life. It was Ryan's. I stood in my kitchen for over an hour, holding the envelope like it had the power to catch fire. When I finally called Mark, I was calm. "I need you to come here," I said. "Now." He arrived looking nervous. Before he could speak, I handed him the letter. I watched his face drop as he read it. Every word drained the color from his skin. He finally looked at me and said, "I thought she would never find him." So it was true. "You kidnapped him," I whispered. "You took a child and raised him under false papers. I could be arrested just for being a part of this." Mark sank into the chair like he had aged 10 years. I loved him. I had no choice. "You always had a choice," I snapped. "You chose to lie, to trap me, to trap him. This whole life you built, it was a fabrication." I felt dizzy. I had raised a boy that did not legally belong to me, that Mark had no legal custody of, and that Melissa, the true mother, had been searching for this whole time. That night, I called Ryan. He answered after the third ring. "I need to give you something," I said. "Come by tomorrow." When he arrived the next morning, I handed him the photos, the letter, and the envelope. He opened it silently. I watched his fingers tremble, the same way mine had. I expected him to scream, to cry, to accuse. But he sat down and just whispered, "I do not know who I am anymore." I sat across from him. That makes two of us. We were quiet for a long time, and then Ryan asked, "Did you know?" I shook my head. No, but Mark did. Ryan clenched his jaw. He let me believe a lie. So did Diana. So did everyone. And then he did something I did not expect. He stood up, walked to my fridge, took out the photo magnet of us at his first baseball game, the one I had kept all these years. He stared at it. "This one feels real," he said. And then he asked, "Will you come with me to meet her?" I froze. "You want me there?" He nodded. "You may not be my biological mom, but you are the only one who stayed." The next week we flew to meet Melissa. She lived in a quiet part of Oregon. Her house was small but neat, surrounded by tall pine trees and silence. When she opened the door, she gasped. Ryan looked at her for a long time, then said, "You are not who I expected." She replied, "Neither are you." We spent the weekend there. Melissa told him everything, her pregnancy, her fear, her regret. Ryan listened quietly, nodding, asking a few questions, but staying reserved. At one point she turned to me and said, "You gave him a life, thank you." I smiled, but I did not reply, because the truth was, she had given me one too. Through Ryan, I had become more than a wife, more than a placeholder. I had become a mother, even if the law, biology, and history said otherwise. But just when I thought the story had finally come full circle, Melissa handed Ryan another envelope. And this time, it had my name written on it. The envelope was slim and sealed carefully, like someone had taken their time folding it. My name was written across the front, in handwriting I had now seen on multiple documents. Neat, steady, and purposeful. I took it from Melissa with a nod, trying not to show how much my heart was pounding. She did not explain. She just said, "You should read this when you are alone." That evening, after Ryan had gone to sleep in the guest room and Melissa had disappeared into her room, I sat on the back porch and opened the envelope under the moonlight. Inside was a single handwritten letter. "Claire, there is something I did not tell Ryan, and I do not know if I ever will, but I feel you have the right to know, because none of this would have happened the way it did without you. When I first gave Ryan up for adoption, I was told he had gone to a couple who would raise him legally and safely, but after a year, I received a letter from an anonymous source. It had no return address, but it simply said, 'Your son is not where he is supposed to be.' I tried to get help. I hired a private investigator. It took years to find anything. But when I finally tracked Mark down, he was already living with you. And I saw how Ryan looked at you. I watched you pick him up from school once. He held your hand, he smiled. You knelt down to wipe something off his face, and I could tell he was loved. I wanted to take him back. I wanted to scream, to fight, to reclaim what I lost. But I saw the way he looked at you, and I could not do it. So I made a deal. Yes, I made a deal with Mark. He agreed to keep my name buried in exchange for full custody, even though technically he never had it. He forged documents. He manipulated the system. But he also said something I never forgot. Claire is the only reason Ryan is whole. I kept my distance because I believed you were the only one who could save him from everything Mark had broken. But I also know secrets like this never stay buried forever. And I was right. I know Ryan is angry right now, hurt, lost. But you are still the mother he remembers when he scrapes his knee, when he graduates high school, when he wakes up sick in the middle of the night. That will never change. I do not expect your forgiveness. I just wanted you to know you were the best thing that ever happened to both of us. Melissa. I sat there for a long time, feeling the chill in my spine that had nothing to do with the wind. I had spent years feeling like the second choice, like the replacement, like the forgotten middle piece in someone else's story. But this letter, it made me realize something I never allowed myself to fully believe. I had been the center all along. The next morning, Ryan and I packed our things. Melissa hugged him and whispered something in his ear that made him nod and smile faintly. As we drove away, he was quiet for most of the ride. Then, somewhere on the highway, he turned to me and asked, "Why did you stay all those years, even when Dad treated you like that?" I stared at the road for a moment before answering, "Because I loved you more than I hated being invisible." He was quiet again. Then he said, "You were never invisible. I just could not see past what they wanted me to see." 3 weeks later, we moved back home. I reopened my store, but this time I hired help. I started teaching part-time at a local business college. I began investing in myself, not just financially, but emotionally. I even started dating again, slowly, carefully, with a clarity I had never had before. Ryan? He decided not to attend NYU after all. He took a gap year to find himself. He started therapy. He began writing music. And sometimes, when I would pass by his room, I would hear him playing guitar and singing lyrics that sounded an awful lot like thank yous he could never quite say out loud. Then, one afternoon, a large brown envelope arrived at the house. No sender, just our address. Ryan opened it. Inside were notarized papers. Melissa had transferred partial custody rights to me, retroactively, along with a notarized letter of recommendation for me to be named Ryan's legal guardian if anything ever happened to her. "She wants you to have what should have been yours all along," Ryan said. I held the documents close, feeling a strange ache in my chest. Not sadness, not regret, just release. That weekend, Ryan posted another photo. It was not dramatic. It was not poetic. Just a candid shot of me sitting on the porch, drinking coffee and reading a book. The caption read, "She may not have given me life, but she gave me everything else. Happy Mother's Day, Mom." I did not cry. I smiled, because this time it was real, and this time it was mine. If this story moved you, made you think, or reminded you of the power of silent sacrifices, do not forget to subscribe to our channel. Every week, we bring you real, emotional, and deeply human stories that stay with you long after the video ends.